Oh, what the heck?
What? Oh,
Well,
no.
I just had Steam big screen mode turn on, and I didn't press anything. I can't see anything.
Time to get on your big screen mode pants.
Exit big picture mode. Okay, I'm good. I'm here. I sent the link in the private chat, but it's called Islanders.
Thank you.
Very good.
There we go. Awesome.
You can that, or we can allude to a news article. You go out and play Pokemon Go.
I've tried playing that. I don't know. I missed the whole Pokemon thing quite a bit. Like not even the card game. Just barely missed Magic the Gathering.
Oh yeah, no, I was in that same gap with like Magic the Gathering to Pokemon Go, and like I missed the Pokemon stuff, but Magic still brings me in. They're doing they're doing Final Fantasy and Magic meshed together, and I'm like, well, there goes my wallet.
Yeah, I
draws me back in. So.
I'm like right in that 1977 generation where there were some people that got into Magic at the beginning. And I remember hanging out and trying to play it and really wishing and trying really hard to like that game.
Yeah.
And
no, I ran into people that still remember my technique. Like a year ago, I ran into somebody that I played with in high school, and they're like, "I remember you. Like you would come up with like these fun jank decks that would have some whole. You would manipulate some broken thing to where you would just like clone
you're that
creatures
guy,
with enchantments, and you would just do this, and nobody could figure out how to beat it because I wasn't playing the meta." And I'm like, I'm still like that. I don't play the meta. I play like some weird thing, and you're like, my deck didn't plan for this. Like, what is going on?
There's a future in computer security for you.
Exactly. I was like,
I've been in the same boat. I've been in the same boat, John, though. I've been looking for a new hobby that'll at least get me out of the house. And this weekend, I'm going paintballing for the first time.
There you go. That'll be fun. May I recommend our Lord and Savior mountain biking and rock climbing, though. Those are two, like, I don't know about you, Corey, but like biking season can't get here fast enough. Like I'm
already there, John. Come to the P&W, my friend. We don't stop
are you gravel grinding, or are you able like?
Oh, I rode Bellingham last weekend. It's in. It was a little snowy at the top, but it was good. I also ride gravel and road though. If it's bike stuff, I'm into it. I just like forest bathing. I just go out there and I'm like, look at that fern. It's so pretty. And then I just am happier.
I miss trees.
Like my problem is like not that like once I can go out, I can rock climb, I can do all of that stuff. That's fine. My problem is like I'm an empty nester pretty much now. So I just don't have kids to like yell at the house. So like walk around and I'm like, well, there's no kids to yell at. That mess is mine. Yeah. That mess is Erica's.
Who left these dishes? Dang it, it was me.
And Erica's like madly working and learning Monday.com or Jira and stuff. And I'm like, well, I can't go downstairs and play rock and roll because that will definitely disturb her. And I can't watch movies. I can't handle them anymore. I don't know what happened. It just broke in my head. I'm like that old guy. It's like, these movies are derivative crap. Speaking of old men. So yeah, I tried to
comment and burned as you enter.
Yeah, try. I tried to do the video game thing, and I'm still trying. I will try, but we'll see.
I remember when I first got hired, it said you were playing Mech Warrior for like at least 2 months.
Dude,
yeah.
Mech Warrior was legit.
That's my like that game comes out. And I can play that game because that was like the first graphical video game that I had was Mech Warrior 1. And I started playing that. And if you can look at the graphics on it, I don't know if Ryan can bring up a picture, but I can still sit down in that game and I can beat it probably within like 45 minutes fairly quickly. And when
you need a different game, that's way too fast.
Yeah. And it's way too fast. And the new ones, I like play it for a little while and then I'm just done. I've just had it after a while. So
John, have you heard of a game called Dark Souls?
There, that one. Scroll down.
No, don't play Dark Souls. That is the opposite of a good time.
There we go.
No, I remember Mech 2, the like Ghost Bear Clan.
Yeah, so that was the Mech Warrior 1 graphics, and played Mech Warrior 2. I played all of the Mech Warrior games all the way through, but that was that's the straight crack.
Did you play 5?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And the new one, Clans and Mercenaries, was awesome. 5 Mercenaries. And it's not that great until you get into the mods, and the mods just kick
Oh,
ass.
yeah. Yep. That's how it's always been, how it always will be.
And I'm just like, community. Nope, done. So, all right, we got a group here. Are we ready to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dark Souls for calming, relaxing games. Like, F you. What is wrong with these people? Like,
it's cybersecurity in a video game. You just get tortured over and over again until you get it right once.
Again and again and again. All right, let's bring out the crooked finger and let's get this thing going.
All right. I can click the right tab. There we go.
Hello and welcome to Black Hills InfoSec talking about news. And this week we have a whole bunch of awesome stories. We have polymorphic extensions, not polyphia extensions, polymorphic extensions. Hackers take credit for the X cyber attack because of course they do. Lazarus strikes NPM again. Saudi Arabia buys Pokemon Go. Can't get away from video games. Let's get back into hacking. That's the way to go. Hackers use advanced MFA-Bypassing techniques, which are not, for people that have been doing this for a while, we've been seeing this like again and again and again. And then China's Volt Typhoon, not a trendy alternative rock band, but a group of hackers from China. They dwell in the United States electronic grid for an extended period of time, get bored, and apparently go away because those networks suck. Well, we are joined by an amazing cast of characters today, so I want to say thank you all for joining. I kind of want to do the polymorphic plugin thing, like browser plugins, a little bit later, unless we have people that have to skedaddle. Joff, are you okay hanging around? Because I wanted you and I have been talking about, screw it, let's do it, Joff. Let's go right into it. And Joff's microphone does not work. There's nothing coming from his microphone at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pantomime Joff while he makes mouth movements.
You see, John, I turned my brain into
for
AI.
years. And these things are freaking amazing. And we'll be doing that as we
John, thanks for approving my request for an RTX 5090.
It's really something when your restream as I call it, decides
restream.
That your microphone is a Pro Tools virtual device instead.
How do you tell me you do like professional quality music, Joff, without telling me that you do professional quality music?
Damn, I think the cat's out of the bag.
It is the keyboard in the back. So I'm going to set this up, but I want you guys to talk about it. But in all seriousness, we have been talking about how the browser is the new endpoint for a long time at Antisyphon security training classes. Anytime we talk about it from BHIS. And I kind of started, I think, publicly talking about this more and more, where you look at plugins like Grammarly. Grammarly is a keylogger, right? And I tweeted this out a number of years ago, and Grammarly actually responded and said, no, we're totally not a keylogger. Anything that is marked secret, we don't actually log or do anything with. I'm like, that makes me feel better. It's not the passwords. It's literally just all the stuff the passwords are protecting. And when you look at the power of some of these plugins, it is ridiculous. And they can hook into a number of different tabs. They can basically grab all of your keystrokes, basically all of the security relevant things that you can think of. And that's cool. And Joff headed up some programs at BHIS to create malicious browser plugins, which he will talk about here in a little bit. But let's do that. Joff, let's talk about like the state of the plugins and the research that you did and Jack's done at BHIS for our continuous pen testing stuff and for, standard pen testing over the years. Where have we been with that malicious browser plugin game? And then I want to segue into why the polymorphic plugin stuff is so cool. So go ahead.
Yeah. So look, it obviously depends on the browser architecture. So we can just say right now that Chromium is absolutely the dominant browser architecture, right? It's behind Edge, it's behind Chrome. It is more than likely the architecture almost everybody uses, right? So, having said that, quite a while ago, I started digging really heavily into the architecture of the browser, trying to work out, how exactly are they putting this thing together, and where are the barriers between the various components of the browser? And I ended up being very impressed. First of all, I do think that the Google crowd with the Chromium project have done a very, very good job in breaking the browser up into a process and multi-threaded architecture that attempts to silo and protect different components of how the browser operates, which is awesome. There are some things that are awfully hard to solve, though. And JavaScript is one of these really strange animals that I truly think people are trying to move away from, honestly, right? There is a web virtual engine, web code virtual engine that kind of runs and executes a lot of this JavaScript and a lot of the plugins that WebAssembly now fits into. And there's this considerable concern that we are adding, just like anything in our industry, we're adding additional functionality, and as we add additional functionality to any architecture, naturally, at least initially, we are going to expand the attack surface, right? That's the kind of things we have to deal with. But if you were to sit on your desktop right now and do a process listing of Chrome, you'll find something really interesting. Chrome, when it launches multiple different types of processes, and there are many of them. But in particular, there's things called renderers versus network processes versus, I'm trying to remember the different categories now, versus other processes. And so early on in the piece, I started digging into the browser and saying, well, can I get in between the renderer process and the process that does all the network traffic? Because if I can get in between that in terms of inter-process communication, then I get to listen to everything, regardless of whether it's TLS or not. There used to be old ways of doing that have gone by the wayside. One of the old ways that was in existence was to hook specific functions in OpenTLS, right? Because, OpenSSL, same thing. OpenSSL under the hood, right, had very good, well-documented functions. And if you hook into the encrypt-decrypt side of it, right, you can obviously try to intercept traffic. So, okay, that's a little bit of a background. The renderer process is going to have some vulnerability to plugins. Where we get interesting problems that are difficult to solve is plugins are an open architecture thing, right? Now they are siloed from these other processes, but you when you're in a plugin scenario, you can affect the renderer process because what it renders is what it's being told to render, right? Ultimately. Anyway, I'll stop there. Let's. What else are we going to talk about, John?
I want to talk about. I want to set up the stage because I think it goes into like continuous pen testing and Corey and Ralph and open it up to other people. But I want to walk through the actual article now, kind of taking what Joff was talking about. And if you spend some time looking at, like I mentioned, Grammarly, you got one password that gets access to all of your different tabs, right? Salesforce was one that they actually utilized for demonstration purposes. Once again, whenever they talk about this article, there wasn't a vulnerability in something like Salesforce. Or there's plugins that'll show you different coupons. Like you go to a website that's selling you stuff, it'll be like, well, here's coupons available. So you have these plugins that are legitimate, quote unquote, plugins that are harvesting information about what tabs and what you're doing on those websites. And just like Joff was talking about, you're kind of hitting this intersection between making the internet more functional and usable for people, and then you get into security issues. Now, what SquareX came up with and SquareX Labs is it isn't just an issue of creating a malicious plugin, all right? And Joff, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the more difficult things you run into if you're trying to create a malicious plugin is getting it published in a store. That in and of itself maybe is not that difficult, even though they do have security checks. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I posted another article internally about just those two things. So first is about how the Chrome web store is a mess, right? And this article that was in there, he goes in deep detail about how much of a mess the Chrome web store is. And this ties into making malicious, extensions. But essentially, he goes through and finding out that like making a featured plugin is super easy, right? And it's not that hard. You would think that a featured would mean someone reviewed it, but that's not the case. No. Reporting it is like a very like non-effective mechanism for these. And then I'll add to one other thing you just mentioned, which was the plugins to give you discount coupon codes. What was the Honey was found that they were actually making up coupon codes. There's a whole other thing about this. So that's like, on top of them being able to see what sites you are and then making coupon codes and then not making them so they make more money. It's a whole other thing. But anyways, yes.
It's bad.
It's bad. It's bad all the way across this, like from the Chrome web store to the kind of applications that are being made as plugins to people abusing the whole process it's out there, right?
And I want to circle back to that because I think that gets into whenever you have Google, you have Microsoft, you have Apple becoming the actual gateway guardians for applications and your plugins and absolutely everything. They'll always say things like, well, you need someone to validate and make sure it's secure. But their number one goal is not security. Their goal is to try to get as much in the store because the more that you have these plugins, the more people buy stuff, the more they make a percentage of that revenue. So whenever we're looking at the stuff that came from SquareX, an attacker can take and publish this polymorphic extension in Chrome. And it took us a while. We were able to find it. I think Jack found it last week, and he was able to pull it down and look at the code, and it was pretty cool. But through a social engineering tactics, and this is one of those areas and one of the reasons why a lot of pen testing firms aren't doing this, is once it's published in the store, it means anybody can download it, right? So you run into this idea of scope creep, not in a good way or even a marginally kind of maybe slightly bad way, but horrific way, where you might actually end up exploiting completely innocent bystanders. And there's ways around trying to deal with that, but that becomes a real problem once it's just in the store. But you use social engineering to trick a victim to install this malicious plugin. During the process, it'll go through and say, hey, you need to pin it. Then it'll take a look at what other plugins exist, and it'll impersonate and kind of overlay that plugin. And one of the coolest things about this is it can actually disable that plugin and work as kind of an abstraction layer for that plugin and backdoor its functions. A kind of horrible example of this that I because I'm old and I'm always trying to relate things to what I've done in the past is looking at Stuxnet. Stuxnet was an old school virus that basically took over Siemens PLC dynamic link libraries and wrapped, I think that there was originally 11 functions in the dynamic link library that it wrapped, but it basically renamed the original one. And then it had a handful of malicious functions, but it would forward all of the legit functions to the legitimate dynamic link library. So now we're seeing that same type of approach, but now it's being used to impersonate target extensions. So this is literally impersonating an extension that somebody is running on their computer system. They probably installed it for legitimate reasons, like we said, 1Password or Salesforce or any of those different ones that you can see, uBlock Origin and what is it, Ghostry or AdBlock Plus or any of those different things, and it can wrap that. And with the Salesforce or the 1Password extension, they were able to intercept the authentication for that plugin. And then I think they had a quote in here, they have the keys to the kingdom at that particular point. And if you get to the bottom, Ryan, if you can scroll all the way down where it talks about how do we protect against this? They really kind of get to what Ralph was talking about, like on the Chrome store, we're kind of screwed. The Chrome store is very much the Wild West. There is not a lot of protections. Yeah, it seemed like a good idea if we buy all of our stuff, but really it doesn't look like Google is doing as much security checking as they should. For users and enterprises, they're like, be careful what you install, which is always horrible advice, right? And then on the enterprise side, you can actually query through Active Directory and Azure type things what plugins are installed, but only on browsers that are controlled by your organization. It's kind of rough. And of course, SquareX, much credit to them. They basically were like, you can do all of this, or you can just buy our product, which specializes in defending against this type of attack, which I thought was kind of fun.
John, I heard you have a problem. We have a product.
Yeah, if you have a problem, we have a product. If you have an ambulance, we'll chase it.
One of the interesting things I found with the Chromium project was, and a lot of people are probably aware of this, and if you're not, you're about to be. That there is this enormous list of command line flags that you can add to a Chromium-based browser. It doesn't matter if it's Edge or Chrome or whatever, to change its behavior from a security protection perspective. And so one of the strategies that I had gone down, and I've seen done before as well, is try to write something that can crash the browser. If you crash the browser, just restart it immediately. Pretend to the user like, hey, everything's cool, but at the same time, weaken the protections when you restart it. And, some strategies like that. So I could see there's going to be some, sort of further attempts to go even more polymorphic, if you like, where we have sort of combo attempts to perhaps have something that crashes the browser, restarts it, maybe drops a little side load of a DLL on the restart and weakens the protections enough that it'll actually load that DLL, which per my earlier comment, hats off, by the way, to the Google Chrome team on this one, when they actually have the architecture of the different processes running the Chromium project. They tightened down the in particular on Microsoft Windows, the process protection flags really, really well. I mean, they really did a good job on that. But
Joff, if I remember correctly, when you were working on this for BHIS, it was difficult to break out of what the browser was doing. When we're on the browser, we're doing really, really, really good.
Right, exactly.
And I can't remember, what the hell did we name our malicious browser plugin?
I don't remember it right now, but
my head. But when we're looking at that, it's really locked down. But if you stay within the context of the browser, like being able to pull session identifiers, being able to pull credentials, being able to do keystroke logging, all of that was relatively, I mean, there were still definitely protections in place, but it was easier to get around those protections than trying to break out of the browser itself and do stuff to the operating system.
Yeah, that's right. If you stay within that tab context, basically, you can do things, and that's just the fact that Google wants people to write these fancy plugins and stuff, right? And they also bolted the WebAssembly engine on top of that. And so they expanded the capability as well. So, that's where things started to get really, really interesting. Our attention turned away a little bit, but maybe it's time to turn our attention back.
Maybe it is.
I feel like we buried the lead a little bit on this. So to be clear, what someone did is they made a browser extension that was in the Google Chrome Web Store. And that browser extension is polymorphic, which doesn't actually mean anything. What it means is it can impersonate other applications, other extensions. So as far as detecting that, it's not really malware. It's just another password manager from the perspective of like the Google AI app scanner thing.
Right. It's a feature, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a feature. It's a password manager. It's also
it is a separate plugin though too, Corey. I think that's a really important thing from a detection perspective. It's not inserting itself as a Trojan into an existing plugin.
It does nothing on the endpoint. It doesn't do anything with DLLs. It doesn't do anything with WebAssembly. It's a legitimate extension that just impersonates other extensions. So it's basically a watering hole attack.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think it's showing how difficult, and I think it's continuing to show once again that the browser is really where malware development is moving. And, I just see this as a great, because everything's in the cloud. I can't remember. I think, Bron, when you said something, it's like, sure, it's not the operating system. It's just literally everything that the business does is in the browser itself.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, why go after the endpoint? The endpoint can be valuable, sure, But if the user is like 90% of users, they probably just do email in the browser, do their team stuff in the browser, access sensitive web apps in the browser, do whatever their business function is in the browser.
Other than those things.
So one of my initial focuses though was go after the endpoint and make the endpoint attack its own browser, right?
Yeah. That was the reboot trick that you did.
Sure, but you could also just say this is a great password manager that's free and just get 30,000 people to install it.
Yeah, and frankly, that's the easier path, right?
Well, but also taking this another level, Corey, like if we're talking about like social engineering, the idea of like, a watering hole attack is kind of maybe a dynamic watering hole attack. Somebody's trying to go to, let's say Dropbox, or they're trying to go to box.com, or they're trying to go to DocHub or DocuSign or any of those things, dynamically generating those plugins to match that specific website. I think there's a lot more that can be done with this. And it's sad. This is one of those things in like malicious computer security research where it's like, well, then why are attackers not doing that? Because literally all the other shit they're doing still works just fine. They haven't had to progress to this yet. It's just more greenfield space for them to get into. And I don't know. I think that's good.
I think it's like a great angle for exploitation. It's like an easy initial access vector that doesn't require you to detonate a payload or do something that CrowdStrike's going to be super excited about. It just requires you to convince a user to install a browser plugin, which isn't like, I think most people also, how much security training is covering malicious browser plugins?
Not much.
Maybe some.
How many organizations are you seeing that don't have managed browsers?
All.
Almost all. Okay,
almost all. This is the whole thing.
No, wait. I want to clarify. You'll see them using Edge for Microsoft, but they're still running like standard Chrome. They're running Firefox.
Well, they don't lock down the browser.
Yeah. Is there a product that does that?
Corey, you can. A lot of your EDRs are not looking in your browser at all. They look at the browser as one monolithic process that they stay the F away from. Yeah. Like they just don't go there.
Yeah. The thing is, though, you can track the file. You can track Chrome add-ons being installed via file paths, right?
You can, and
malicious.
I've seen that, but the problem is like the what we've called out before, like the special snowflakes that they go, okay, you don't allow me to install things in Chrome because you have an allow listed list of browsers. I'm going to use Firefox. And because I am such a special snowflake in your organization, you are not going to come down on me for using Firefox because I am like this special whatever in your environment. And you cannot tell me what to do on my machine.
Or Alex
are getting compromised and getting targeted.
And Alex, how many times do we see, this app works best with Firefox?
Oh, yeah.
Never. It's literally never. It's always Chrome.
Literally never.
You know what?
No one says this works best with Firefox.
I want to get Mary and Shecky in.
It's a rehash of the local administrator argument, is what Alex just said.
We're right back.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, Mary, Shecky, your thoughts on this too, because I want to spread the love a little bit.
Go ahead, Mary.
I use Mary Ellen. I think in a really, really large organization with like 60 to 80,000 endpoints. I mean, it's inevitable that you're going to have, they're just going to creep in. And I haven't found a process like automated. Back in the day, a couple of years ago when I was at a large company, I would run queries maybe weekly. But yeah, it's a real issue. This is a really.
So when you were doing those queries, could you give a little bit of context on that? What was the parameters, if there was even policy, process, procedure around it? And then were there any situations where you found things and you're like, no, absolutely not, with the browser plugin stuff?
Yeah. I mean, the policy was pretty much, we would recommend that every, even like, people using, the coupon, extensions and things like that. There were a lot of those, and, you hated to be that person, but it's just, there are also, the traffic is not just going there. It's going to a lot of places, and it just creates a lot of noise and a lot of extra traffic as well that you don't need on the network. So,
it's one of those things we always talked about. Disable ads if you can, like block them at the network level. But that's neat, but it's not really realistic, because a lot of times if you do that, it actually shuts down legitimate sites from functioning properly at all, because they get mad that their ads aren't rendering. So
yeah, well, and even ad blockers, even ad blockers, they will break legitimate websites, because so many websites are doing so much more in the client with JavaScript and various libraries instead of having it on the server. And I understand that from a load balancing perspective, but you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whenever I enable ad blocking in my house, my wife just gets upset because the targeted ads don't work anymore.
First, Google link doesn't work. Instagram doesn't work. I'm out. Yes, that's all I want to use.
She's so like, I have to turn off the Wi-Fi, or I can't click the ads. I'm like,
I'm old school on this. I still have a manual list of domains that I'm fetching, and I'm blocking it in my own DNS infrastructure. And I'm also blocking DNS over HTTPS, because on principle, that's fucking
is that considered
damn square job?
Is that a Joff hole? What is that?
Joff, bad Joff, no square Joff.
That's $20 in the square job. Okay, because that's an absolute protocol abomination. Don't get me started. Where's Paul Vixie when I need him?
Yeah.
And so all of that said, when my family comes and complains, I tell them to stop complaining. I've got a hard border on that one.
Your family is now using purely cellular data at your house.
That's how
exactly. And that's probably what's going on.
Ron, when you had something, I saw your hand go up like you were going to say something.
One of the things that no one has touched on yet is when plugins go stale and they're no longer being maintained, and then they get taken over. So now you've got, in addition to all of the other stuff, now you have a legitimate plugin that has been taken over by a malicious actor. And isn't that a whole lot of fun?
And I think we should use that as an opportunity to transition into Lazarus attacking NPM packages again. I just absolutely. So North Korea, once again, props to them getting out and attacking everybody.
Would you say they brought this technique back from the dead?
I think you'd have to say that they brought this technique back from the dead.
It never died.
I love this, what is it? Socket Security, giving some credit, great research. They uncovered beaver tail malware. I love the names.
That's just a Canadian delicacy. That's just a treat.
I just think it's like the Buc-ee's of InfoSec, it's like beaver tail. Seemingly benignly named packages, which always cracks me up when people are like, is buffer validator, event handle package, array empty validator. Like, my God, those names are not malicious. What do they expect? Do they expect
who's downloading those
dash
things,
package? It's maybe that would be more effective.
If you think NPM developers know what they're downloading,
have you ever tried to install one package on NPM or PNPM or NPX or the other 500 other package managers?
Why do we need so many of them?
Listen, you click, you type in one thing that you would like to install, and then all the dependencies come along, and it is like a train. Just a train.
All those 50,000 dependencies for
avalanche.
Loading up the is number even, is number odd? Like, why are you downloading a package that tells you if a number is even or odd, or if an array is empty?
There was that time years ago where the package for left aligned text, it was like a 3-line package, a 3-line of code package got removed, and it broke 30,000 programs because everyone was using it.
And I think that they do that because coding is hard, apparently.
So here's the deal.
Reinventing the wheel is bad, but this is taking it to the extreme.
Come on, it's not Fortran or effing assembly.
We just talked about this, right?
Yeah.
We said the browser is the new operating system, right? This is the window to everything. So, but that interface is built on JavaScript, and that comes from Node Package Manager.
Congratulations.
The whole thing. If all the websites that you go visit, they're all in JavaScript. They're all using some kind of Node framework, whether that's a server side or just client side. It could just be a client side application. It doesn't have to be all of Node as we think of it normally, right?
Well,
every modern application is using.
And Ralph, to kind of roll with it a little bit more, obfuscation is incredibly normal in the JavaScript space, right?
That's called minifying. It's
minifying. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And they use it all the time to protect intellectual property. They use it for a variety of different reasons. Like, so you can't just be like, well, this is obfuscated JavaScript, therefore it's evil. Because I would argue that most of the JavaScript is obfuscated, right? Right, Bronwyn?
Well, it's also bandwidth. You got to remember, ISPs charge by bandwidth. And so if all of a sudden you get a spike in traffic, I can, by minifying any type of a file, whether it's JavaScript, HTML, or CSS, I can cut my cost as a developer significantly due to the bandwidth demands on a website.
Yes.
So it's not, obfuscation is often a reason for minifying, but the developers, they may or may not care about obfuscation so much as their bosses care about the cost every time a website gets hit.
Yeah.
Well, don't worry. This attack will have no impact because, as we know, every software that's developed has a secure software bill of materials that is validated
every day.
And let's also remember, Corey, that's why we should never use
through the sentence. I'm sorry.
No one should ever use open source software because it's not as secure as commercial software, which never uses open source.
I've never seen, well, I think there is commercial NPM packages, but almost all of them are open source.
I'm just going to throw that out there. I was being sarcastic.
I know you were.
No, not you, Ralph. I'm just letting the internet know because there's people that are listening to this and they'll flame me on email to be like, open source software is actually more secure and I can't believe sarcasm, folks. Sorry.
They obviously don't know that sarcasm is one of the many services
we offer. It is one of the services. It's one of it's the hacker. It's the we can
you're not supposed
hacker
to
sarcasm is just one of the services we offer at BHIS.
You're not supposed to inhale, Corey. Don't inhale on the day of the green.
Listen, in my state, I can inhale all I want.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to get to some more stories, get a little bit of diversity. One of them, I don't want to talk about Twitter right now. God, I don't want to.
We can talk about Volt Typhoon. Let's talk about
Volt Typhoon. Yes. Go ahead, Corey, take it away.
So basically, this is again, like most cybersecurity blogs, it's a thinly veiled ad because that's the world we live in. Everything's an ad. Sorry. But basically, it's a cool little case study of why people like some power grid in Massachusetts should have network monitoring is essentially the use case. It's specifically by the firm Dragos, who we've worked with on our OT backdoors and breaches deck. Big fans of them. They do really good work and have an awesome product. But basically, the story goes, there's a power grid. It's a relatively small power grid called Littleton Electric Light and Water Departments. Lulwood. That's how you pronounce that.
It's Lou.
Basically, they were in the process of implementing network monitoring with Dragos. And during the process, they were like, hey, this is malicious. So they accelerated the project, I guess, which is pretty funny to imagine. Like, oh, yeah, we definitely need this. We're already compromised. And essentially, they did a full deep dive. The two techniques that are called out in the article are SMB traversal, which I was like, are we talking internet bound SMB traversal? Like, how bad is this? Is this like, did they just link an SMB beacon to the public internet? I don't know. I'm imagining it was probably that bad. And also RDP lateral movement. So basically, like, how I imagine this is some person's computer got compromised. They had direct access to IoT. And so they were pivoting into the OT environment. Interestingly, I think the threat actor is Volt Typhoon, which is a Chinese affiliated threat actor. And they were just gathering data. So this is the P in APT, right? This is the persistence part. They were just kind of hanging out, watching, see what was going on. I don't know what their plan was, but it's always spooky.
Just hang.
300 days is a long time.
Well, I thought you were about to say that the grid operator doxed themselves in the process because that would have sucked.
No, I mean, this is a public, like, this is something they published intentionally as like a little use case kind of thing. I mean, honestly, kudos to the utility. Kudos to them for following on the sword and saying, we messed this up, or, we had this incursion. Here's what we learned. Here's what you should do about it. Like, it does go a long way because these small utilities, they don't always feel like they're represented in the cybersecurity community, right? Like, these are small entities with small budgets they don't always feel like participants in the cybersecurity community. So it's cool to have something like this be public. But yeah, scary.
So a couple of additional things that I think are really interesting, like the entire SCADA, ICS, OT like industry, anytime anyone gets a breach, like they freak out. They're probably one of the more reactionary groups in the infosec space, and that's fine, right? Because people can die. So, but just, I understand that reactionary thing. I'm not ripping on it at all.
And
but
they have pretty heavy regulatory requirements too.
They do. And so their risk tolerance is really, really, really low. So this particular breach, you will see presentations talking about this breach, the impact of this breach for a year, 2 years, maybe 3 after this thing breaks down, because this is stuff that resonates with that specific group in a way that hardly any of the other groups resonate with attacks, because they happen all the time. That's number one. Number two, the other problem I have with that, and that's okay, I understand that's okay, is they tend to be very hyper focused on what exactly happened here. We need to stop that from happening in our place. And they only focus on that technique that was discovered. And I've talked with Rob at Dragos, and I've talked to a number of people in this space over the years. And that is one of the problems that they run into, is whenever you're trying to sell a comprehensive security architecture, something like Dragos, a lot of times the customers are like, well, I just need to stop what these people did over here, whether it's Florida or this particular breach. And we don't need all of that other stuff, because you're just trying to sell us more than what we actually need, because their budgets are definitely problematic in those spaces as well. So if you're in this space, don't fall into that trap of, we just need to fix this, because the attackers will take advantage of anything they can to gain access to your environment. That's why a comprehensive security strategy is so important. Someone was saying something. Sorry.
I was going to a couple things. Number one, the argument here is really for visibility. It's not necessarily, can you be attacked? It's, are you already compromised? Right? Which seems like a good first step. If you're a power grid, wouldn't the first step be, are we already compromised by Volt Typhoon? And can we do anything about it if we are, right? That's like an important call out. The other thing I wanted to call out is this particular one was funded partially through a government grant to help acquire these types of security products called APA, APPA, which I don't really know what that is, but they do call that out on the second page of the study. They say this, their ability to purchase this product was a government grant, which I fully support personally. Like these smaller districts, they either have to raise prices or they have to get a federal grant. They're not going to go out and buy. I mean, it's not Dragos's fault. These products are expensive because they're really advanced and complex to make and develop and deploy. So, it's just kind of a cool and unique thing.
And since we're talking advertisements, I'm just going to throw this out, Corey. Like, we just so happen to have a product called AC Hunter that is dedicated to doing network level beacon detection. Check it out. You can run the community.
We also have an open source version. Yeah,
we do. Yeah, exactly. There's a community edition. Costs you nothing. Like, you can just set up Rita and AC Hunter, feed it a PCAP file, and see if you have beaconing in your environment. So you might want to track that. Somebody said APA, not ABBA. No, dancing.
Not ABBA. Yeah. We're not going to Stockholm. We're not going to go to the ABBA museum.
I'm going to try my best not to sing. I'm not going to sing. We're not going to do ABBA.
Fernando came to mind immediately. Anyway,
no,
it makes me think though that there's an opportunity in this too, and maybe this is probably a bit of a stretch, but I wonder if there's enough of the smaller utility companies that are of a cookie cutter nature that a reference security architecture could be developed and shopped around to them. I'm sure there's other people that have thought about
the problem with those security architecture docs in this space is, and once again, this is from me talking to Rob, Leslie, Justin Searle at Enguardians, talking to people about this, is the idea of a referenced architecture, as good of an idea as that sounds, doesn't fly, because the architectures are very diverse. And they tend to look at themselves as a whole bunch of precious snowflakes, which they kind of are.
Yeah.
And
it's just inertia with what equipment they already have.
It is.
It's like the badge readers thing. Oh, you have HID. Okay, what are you going to do? Buy a new building? Like
exactly.
It's like, okay, we can't deploy. We have 72,000 substation switches or whatever. If we were to purchase and replace every single one, it would cost $2 million or whatever. Like.
And to be fair, right, there's a lot of vendors in the space that are like, why don't you just spend millions and millions and millions of dollars with us, right? That comes up all the time. And I think that that's part of the reason, God, this is turning into a freaking commercial for Dragos. You're welcome, Rob.
I was about to say, if you
don't worry, we'll take our payment on the back end later.
But that is one of the reasons why Dragos works really well is, yes, they do cost money. Absolutely. But they actually were designed from the ground up to try to hook into kind of the existing logging architectures so that they can ingest those logs to do that detection analysis without a huge kind of like change of the entire infrastructure.
Yeah. So, get visibility. That's the key. Mm-hmm. Get visibility, decide what to do once you have visibility. Without that, you wouldn't even know you were compromised, which is way scarier than actually being compromised.
It is. Absolutely. So
who plays Pokemon?
Let's do Pokemon. Let's do that. So this one's easy. Saudi Arabia buy Pokemon Go, and a lot of your location.
That's the whole article.
What could go wrong?
What does that mean?
Savvy Games, which is totally not.
What people don't realize.
So they totally bought it for the game, right?
They actually give you
MBS is like, I've got to win, damn it. I could just totally kill someone right now. They're like, yes, sir, we're buying the game right now. So no one laughed at that? Are
Tell us about Pokemon.
It's fine. It's
Tell us
fine.
about
Holy hell. Okay. God.
So
okay.
the thing that they're buying is in Pokemon Go, they actually have you scan things, right? And you get rewarded for scanning stuff. And they're building a 3D environment with these scannings. And that's the interesting part, that actually Niantic, who owned Pokemon Go beforehand, is still grasping onto that. Anything that's scanned is still going to go to Niantic's now new like spatial 3D augmented geographical company that who knows what they're going to do with now.
There's a lot of buzzwords.
When you say scan,
yeah, well that's literally LiDAR? Like what I have all the
How do I is this camera only, or is it actually using like the iPhone LiDAR?
So who knows what it's using in the back? I use an Android, but it actually has you go up. You have to circle around the object, and it tells you how long, and then it uploads it, and it actually takes a while to do all this.
What kinds of objects? Is it like do your house key? What is the first object?
Yeah, no, it's so guys, it does.
Wait. It's better than that, right? There's research in 6G in this space. I was talking with one of my friends in Finland last week. And like 6G, the way 6G is going to work is it's ultra high frequency, ultra high bandwidth, but you won't be able to go to like traditional cell phone towers at distance. So people will be setting up these little 6G routers, which are really, really, really super small. Trust me, there's a point to all of this, where you can set up these little tiny routers so you can offload. So you aren't going to massive centralized towers, but multiple little 6G routers. So when you start buying routers for your home, they're going to have 6G enabled so your new 6G phones can connect to it. All right, so why is 6G scary as hell? And why is this technology like crazy cool? 6G can scan the room like the equivalent of Batman. If you remember the first Batman movie with Christopher Nolan's, where you can scan the room and it can actually tell you where things are, the position of things, identify things, who's an adult in the room, who's a child. It can take temperatures. It is flipping crazy. Banjo Crashland said, it sounds like a story from the future is. Yes, It is something from the future is. So whenever you're talking about this ability to scan and model and from a three-dimensional perspective, it's no longer an issue of using like the LiDAR. It's no longer an issue of like using the camera itself, but they're going to be able to get that type of telemetry, building layouts, where people are, positioning, even with your phone in your pocket.
Man, all right. I don't have funds to build my own skiff right now, but I'm thinking that's a really good idea.
The other thing they're saying with 6G is it's going to be a mesh network as opposed to the hub-and-spoke architecture.
That's what I mean by lots and lots of little tiny routers that all correlate and connect. And
but the benefit, obviously, of the mesh is that there's no one route, so it just finds the best route. And so,
So for cellular 6G, we've just replaced it with Wi-Fi.
I know. It's mesh Wi-Fi, but it's like it's different from the other mesh Wi-Fi.
Thank God we replaced cellular service with Wi-Fi.
Yes.
So most phones that whenever we start moving to 6G are going to have the 5G chip and the 6G chip. So it'll basically, it's just like you have multiple radios in your phone right now.
If I have to be close to it, I'm just going to go on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I know.
But how many bands are your phone's going to support at that point? I mean, we're at 2.5.
I mean, I already have U2 on my phone. How many more bands?
There's like 17. There's like 17 bands of 5G. And by the way, it's all the different frequencies. I don't know. Is it cancer? Is that what's going to...
Listen, John, you know how many conspiracy theories you just spawned on this podcast? You gotta dial it back.
I hope everybody is diving to the 6G standard right now.
I was going to say,
people behind it are like, "What the hell just happened?"
Sir, our RFP's finally been viewed.
You brought back 6G.
It's 4-minute abs. That's the sweet spot, not 3.5. 4-minute abs. So
okay, there's a funny one. There's a funny breach. So it's in the Big Wells breaching section. It's a Daily Mail article. I know Daily Mail is basically the National Enquirer of Britain. So this is a trash article, but it's a funny story. So Bank of America published a data breach notification. The best part about this is it's a physical data breach. So what did they do? Their data destruction vendor left documents sitting outside. That's the breach.
Awesome.
Oh no.
Jeez. Was it just in a trash can outside, or?
I think yes. It was literally just in a trash can outside. So again, it's not actually that big of a breach. It's just kind of funny that it's not a data breach. That's a freaking SQL injection.
And who says
a data breach?
That at least 2 customers. 2 were impacted.
I know. That's the other best part is it affects 2 customers.
They drove to their house to apologize. No.
How did this count? I know. It's so funny because it's so silly that they had to publish a data breach notification because someone left a box of documents outside with 400 people's info in it. It's just silly and it's stupid. And I just thought it was a funny 5-minute article.
Dumpster diving for the win. That's what I say.
It's just funny.
I think someone just was like, "Hey, are these supposed to be out here?" And they were like, "Huh, look, PII."
Yeah, all of you physical security people, Ralph, I see you. Point to this news article. This is your new North Star for the next 5 years. You use this article as justification for why you need a physical pen test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at this. They're leaving documents outside unsecured.
Yep, that's a finding. That's a pen test finding.
It is. It is.
So yeah, I just thought that was a funny one.
Yes.
Oh wow.
There's no chicken wing article, but it'll do.
No chicken wing.
Do we want to talk about X and the DOS attack?
I mean, it's a nothing burger. This is just an article.
Yeah.
People claim the X attack. Cool. Moving on.
Cool.
I think so if anybody is trying to track this story, there was a DDoS attack against X. Some of the traffic came from Ukraine, a small percentage of it.
Shocker.
Actually. And there was like, it was an attack from Ukraine. No, it's just some packets came from there. So I honestly, I don't care. I don't think anybody would have cared if it wasn't amplified and it was political. So
I like how the details that provided by Elon Musk just define what a DDoS is. It just says, here's what we know. This was a large attack. Either a large coordinated group or a country is involved.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That makes yes, you just defined DDoS. Congratulations.
You did well. Congratulations.
Well, and of course, packet origins can't be spoofed ever, can they?
No.
Well, no, they can't. Actually,
what I can't. The OSI model will save us all.
That's some of that trademark Black Hills information security sarcasm. Yeah, way to go.
Hey, look, I actually do take exception to this. If ISPs actually implemented reverse path forward checks on all of their interfaces on their BGP routes, packet spoofing would stop.
Well, how would that make them more money?
It wouldn't matter because there's another factor at play here, which is one company or country can compromise computers in another country.
Yeah, then you're using real computers, and we saw that. I can't remember; it was a couple of weeks ago. We saw
or
yet
routers,
another botnet.
IoT.
It was like the Mirai 2 botnet, where it's just compromise a bunch of things and go.
Botnets are alive and well, and DDoS is big business.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, most of the big botnets are compromised devices anyways. They're not just like going around with a credit card, like, hey, get as many computers as we can. Woo!
Well,
if your Synology NAS is sending 10 trillion packets a second, it's not because you're backing up your data to the cloud. It's because you left that management interface.
I'll just go ahead and
download all the stuff I like to download.
I'll just go ahead and contradict myself.
I think that this gets into that. This gets into a larger question of attribution, right? And I keep telling people, go read the vault documents from the CIA breach, and there's a document in there about like creating attributional artifacts to attribute it to somebody else. And it's like Bronwyn said, whether or not they're spoofing the packets, whether or not they're compromising systems in those locations and launching that attack, attribution is really hard. So just always take it with a grain of salt anytime you're reading anything about attribution.
But John, they make it look so easy in the movies.
They do. They do.
Have you seen Swordfish? I mean, they were.
What they really should do for this, and like if you read this article deeply, it's basically what they're doing is just spinning the magical wheel of attribution. And what do you know? It's Russia. Woo!
Or not Russia. It's because we can't say it's Russia anymore, folks.
And they pull up an RFC 1918 IP.
It's got to be All right. I want to get into the multi-factor bypass article.
This is also kind of a nothing burger.
It is, but I think it's important. I was really happy that Ralph was here, and Corey, you guys are almost always here. But I think a lot of people, like I've been traveling for the past month a lot, and there's a lot of people that are under the assumption that if they're running MFA, they're completely secure against any type of spear phishing attack. Can you guys kind of walk through, whenever we're doing continuous pen testing and coming up with techniques that we use in the standard pen testing practice, what are some techniques that we use to kind of walk and get around MFA in organizations? And stop all of you that are texting in the chat about the OSI model. You're going to trigger me. Stop. All right. Corey and Ralph, let's talk about
what he meant was keep going loudly.
So you realize you just said challenge accepted, right?
I know.
This article, so the article is pretty cool. I still recommend reading the article. I know I said it was nothing burger, but the reason why is because the article is basically just a collection of all the cool phishing techniques that exist in the world right now. There's adversary in the middle, there's browser in the middle, there's browser in the browser, there's probably browser in the browser in the browser, just keeps going.
3 layers deep, man.
But basically what John's talking about is if you're MFA, you're secure. That's only true if you're only authenticating with passwords. Now, turns out that browsers and other tools like to authenticate with more than just passwords, because if you don't have anything but a password, you have to type your password for every request, which doesn't sound like a good idea. So there's these things called session tokens. And session tokens function as authentication information, and they can be stolen. And session tokens are issued after MFA is completed. So most of these attacks, browser in the middle, adversary in the middle, browser in the browser, all of them rely on essentially granting authentication tokens to a untrusted third party. The only kind of MFA that's resistant to this is what they specifically call phishing resistant MFA, which is basically universal second factor, aka YubiKeys. All other functions and forms of MFA, whether it's SMS or push notification or phone code, they are all vulnerable to this adversary in the middle, browser in the middle nonsense.
Well, even with the YubiKey stuff, if we can intercept like browser in the middle, and then we basically tell the site that we're a phone or an iPad, on some of those sites, it disables any YubiKey authentication as well.
It depends on the configuration.
You have to have it locked down. I mean, you get it. You're getting into like how the site's configured, but
then
basically,
you get into how many people are using YubiKey for 100,000 people in their company.
Well, not many, and even now, we don't recommend it to our clients. We only recommend it for high privilege accounts. It should not be. Every single user having a YubiKey is really overkill.
It's not practicable.
Yeah, the other solution too, is universal two-factor with passkey, right? So those are built into something like 1Password. Those are also man in the middle resistant, just the same way the YubiKey is. It's just not a physical device, but it does still require that essentially authentication of the other side, and that nothing's in the middle. So
security people hate passwords. we hate them. We are sick of them. Let's switch to passwordless. Let's get over it. I mean, as an attacker, I love passwords.
Yeah.
But as a defender, passwords are garbage. Like, if you don't know your password, you can't compromise yourself, especially not if it's a passkey that's cryptographically tied to one site. So yeah, it's just a cool collection of phishing techniques. If you aren't familiar with modern phishing techniques, I mean, we have many webcasts where we talk about it, right?
We just had one.
Check out Rhino's webcast later this week. But yeah, I mean, this is basically a pen tester menu right now. If your pen test firm isn't using most of these techniques, they're not a very good firm. There's Evil Jinx, there's Evil Noviancy. Yeah, I mean, and Cuttlefish is a cool one too. I've heard a lot of people in the pen test biz talking about Cuttlefish. It's cool. I mean, these techniques are terrifying. Yeah. Browser in the middle and browser in the browser. They're really cool.
Browser in the browser.
Yeah.
I like this. Yeah. I like it. Somebody just said, screw passwords, bring NTLM.
They're so good at triggering you, John.
I think he was trying to get you, John.
I know. I keep trying to explain to everybody, like, if you're ever in a compliance standard and someone says no clear text authentication, you have to shut down all NTLM, NTLM v1, NTLM v2, and landman authentication, because Microsoft treats the password hash as if it is the password itself, and it sent barely, just little bit of obfuscation. It sent clear text, but that's a whole nother.
But wait, I thought it was salted and
I thought it was secure. No salt at Microsoft. Low sodium diets. No salt at all
for everybody.
Yeah, with your traditional .NET or NTLM hashes, there is no salt, and they're never going to change it. They've already acknowledged it. They say, ever.
So. All right. Well, that's a good show. Let's wrap it. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. And I will see you guys all next week or at another webcast. There's all kinds of free stuff. Check it out. Once again, if you need to get hacked, afraid to get hacked, think you're hacked, trying to prevent yourself from getting hacked, or learning about hacking, or learning how to defend yourself against hack, Black Hills Information Security is there for all of your hacking needs. Also, check out Antisyphon Security Training. And with that, we're out of here, everybody. Bring out the finger, Ryan.
Bring it.